midnight delivery, a suspenseful horror story. It was a quiet Thursday night in the small town of Brightwood, the type of night where the streets were deserted by 10 p.m. and only a few local spots were still open. One of those places was Tony's Pizza, a local pizzeria known for its late night. Josh, a 19-year-old college dropout, worked the night shift as a delivery driver. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. The pizzeria's neon sign flickered in the window as Josh leaned back against the counter, waiting for the next order. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, and just when Josh was about to doze off, the phone rang. It was a strange, static-filled call that immediately put him on edge. "Tony's Pizza, how can I help you?" Josh answered, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine. The voice on the other end was distorted, like the person was speaking through a broken radio. "One large pizza. Extra cheese," the voice rasped. "Bring it to 72 Bleakmore Road." Josh hesitated. He'd never heard of Bleakmore Road. It wasn't listed on his delivery map, but he shrugged it off. Maybe it was a new street or one that wasn't mapped yet. "Sure thing," Josh said, jotting down the address. "Good," the voice whispered. "Don't be late." The call abruptly ended, leaving Josh staring at the phone. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, but he didn't want to question it. After all, it was just another delivery. Josh packed up the pizza and grabbed his keys. The night air was cold and still as he stepped outside to his car, the only vehicle left in the dark parking lot. He climbed into his old beat-up sedan and plugged the address into his GPS. Nothing came up. Frowning, he decided to follow the vague directions he could recall from the call. As he drove, the town seemed to fade away. The streetlights grew sparse, and soon he found himself on a narrow road lined with dense woods. His headlights barely pierced through the thick fog that rolled across the road like some living thing. His radio started to crackle, and despite his best efforts to find a station, nothing came through but eerie static. The further he drove, the more lost he felt. He hadn't seen a house in miles, and the winding road seemed to stretch on forever. Just as he was about to turn around, he spotted an old, decrepit house looming in the distance. It looked like something out of a horror movie. 2 stories, darkened windows, and surrounded by overgrown trees. There was no driveway, just a dirt path that led up to the front porch. Josh's stomach twisted in knots as he parked the car. Just get in, drop the pizza, and leave, he told himself. He grabbed the pizza box and stepped out into the chilling night air. Every step toward the house felt heavier, like something was pulling him back. The front porch creaked under his weight as he approached the door. He raised his hand to knock, but before he could, the door slowly creaked open. Inside, the air was stale, and the faint smell of decay lingered in the air. The hallway was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb, casting long shadows across the walls. Josh called out hesitantly, "Hello." No answer. He stepped inside, the door swinging shut behind him with a loud bang that made him jump. His heart pounded in his chest as he cautiously made his way down the hallway. The walls were lined with faded, peeling wallpaper, and the wooden floorboards groaned beneath his feet. As he walked, Josh noticed something strange. The house was filled with old furniture, covered in dust and cobwebs, but there were no signs of life. No photographs, no personal items, nothing that indicated. Suddenly, a soft voice whispered his name. He froze, gripping the pizza box tightly. "Who's there?" he called out, but the voice didn't respond. Instead, it beckoned him deeper into the house. Against his better judgment, Josh followed the sound, his feet moving almost involuntarily. The hallway seemed to stretch on endlessly, twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. Finally, he reached a door at the end of the hall. Pushing the door open, Josh found himself in a small room. The walls were lined with old photographs, all depicting the same man, tall, with pale skin and hollow eyes. In the center of the room was a single chair, and sitting in, Josh stepped closer, his breath catching in his throat. But before he could place the pizza down, the figure lifted its head. Hollow, lifeless eyes stared back at him, and a twisted smile spread across its face. "You're just in time," the figure rasped. Josh's blood ran cold. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure whispered, its voice a distorted echo of the one on the phone. Panicking, Josh bolted for the door, desperately trying to pry it open. But the door wouldn't budge, as if some unseen force was holding it shut. He pounded on the wood, his fists sore and bloodied. Then the lights in the room flickered and went out completely. The only sound was Josh's ragged breathing and the slow, deliberate footsteps of the figure approaching him in the darkness. "Please, let me go," Josh pleaded, but his words fell on deaf ears. Just as he felt the figure's cold breath on the back of his neck, the door suddenly burst open. Without looking back, Josh sprinted down the hallway, the sound of the figure's footsteps close behind him. He burst out of the front door and into the cold night air, his heart pounding as he ran toward his car. The fog had thickened, and the once familiar road now seemed like a labyrinth of shadows. Josh jumped into his car and slammed the door shut. He fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Just as he turned the ignition, something slammed against the driver's side window. The figure's twisted face was pressed against the glass, its hollow eyes staring into Josh's soul. With a scream, Josh floored the gas pedal and sped down the road, the figure's laughter echoing in his ears. He didn't stop driving until he was miles away from the house, the fog finally clearing as he neared the town. Josh pulled into the parking lot of Tony's Pizza, his hands still trembling as he climbed out of the car. He stumbled inside, collapsing into a chair. His boss, Tony, looked up from behind the counter, his brow furrowed with concern. "Josh, you okay?" Tony asked. Josh shook his head, still trying to process what had happened. Tony's face went pale. "Bleakmore Road, kid, that street hasn't existed for years. There was a fire, burnt down a long time ago. No one lives there." Josh's heart skipped a beat. "But I was just there." Tony shook his head. "You must have gotten lost, Josh. That place has been abandoned for decades." Josh felt a chill crawl up his spine. He stood up, his legs weak beneath him. As he walked out of the pizzeria and into the night, Josh couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching him. The air around him felt heavy, like the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on him from every direction. And as he climbed into his car and looked into the rearview mirror, he swore he saw a pale figure standing at the edge of the woods, its hollow eyes locked onto him. For weeks, Josh tried to forget about that night. Strange things began happening. One night, as Josh lay in bed, trying to calm his racing mind, his phone rang. His heart sank as he saw the number. Unknown caller. With shaking hands, he answered. "Your pizza's getting cold," the voice on the other end rasped. Josh's blood turned to ice. He dropped the phone, and in the silence that followed, he could hear the faint sound of footsteps approaching his door. It wasn't over, and deep down Josh knew it never would be. He sat frozen in his bed, the soft creaking of floorboards outside his room growing louder with each passing second. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, almost as if whatever was on the other side of that door was savoring every step. The air grew colder, an unnatural chill that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Josh's mind raced, heart pounding in his chest like a drum. He reached for his phone, desperate to call someone, anyone, and then the footsteps stopped right outside his bedroom door. Josh held his breath, his heart hammering in his ears. He stared at the doorknob, praying it wouldn't turn, but then it did, ever so slowly, with a creak that cut through the silence like a knife. The door didn't open fully, just a sliver, barely wide enough to see. But through that narrow gap, Josh caught sight of something pale, an eye, a hollow, lifeless eye of terror paralyzed him. It stood in the doorway, the same unnatural posture, the twisted smile etched into its ghostly face, the same smile it had worn the night he had brought the pizza. "I told you not to be late, Josh," the figure rasped, its voice like the crackling of a broken radio. "You were late." Suddenly, the figure jerked forward in a series of unnatural, twitching movements, like a puppet pulled by unseen strings, its head tilted at a grotesque angle, eyes never leaving Josh's. It stepped into the room, its cold, decaying breath filling the space between them. Panic surged through Josh like a shock of electricity, and finally his body reacted. He scrambled out of bed, tripping over his sheets, and lunged for the door. The hallway stretched before him, impossibly long, the shadows at the edges seeming to move and swirl as though they were alive. Behind him, the figure followed, its feet dragging across the floor, that awful, distorted laugh echoing down the corridor. Josh reached the front door and fumbled with the lock. His hands were slick with sweat, his heart beating out of his chest. He could feel the figure's presence behind him. Finally, the lock clicked open. Josh threw the door wide and bolted into the night, his bare feet pounding against the cold pavement. He didn't stop running until he reached the town square, where the familiar neon lights of the local bar flickered weakly in the fog. He collapsed against a bench, gasping for air, his mind struggling to process what had just happened, but the figure was gone. Josh's hands trembled as he took out his phone again. He needed to call someone. He needed help, but as he pulled up his contacts, his phone buzzed with an incoming message. His stomach dropped when he saw the sender. With dread twisting in his gut, Josh opened the message. "Your pizza is still waiting." Josh's breath caught in his throat. The phone slipped from his fingers, clattering to the ground, but he didn't pick it up. He couldn't. His heart was racing again, faster than before. His eyes darted around the square, searching the shadows, waiting for the figure to reappear. But the square remained empty. No one was there. For the next few days, Josh barely slept. They were in the walls, in the dark corners of his room. You're late." One night, exhausted and desperate, Josh decided to face the source of his torment. He packed a bag with everything he thought he might need: salt, holy water, a flashlight, and drove out to Bleakmore Road. The road was just as he remembered it, shrouded in thick fog, the trees looming like skeletal sentinels in the night. The house was there too, standing in the same eerie stillness, as though waiting for him. With every ounce of courage he could muster, Josh approached the house, his flashlight cutting through the fog. He knew he had to finish what had started. He had to return to the place where it all began. But as he stepped onto the porch, the front door creaked open before he could touch it, just like it had the first time. A blast of cold air rushed out to greet him, carrying with it the faint scent of decay. Josh swallowed hard and stepped inside. The house was the same, old, decrepit, lifeless, but this time Josh knew he wasn't alone. He could feel the figure's presence lurking in the shadows, watching him. "I'm here," Josh whispered, his voice shaking. For a moment, the house was silent, as if holding its breath. Then, from somewhere deep within, the figure's voice echoed through the halls. "You brought me here. You will finish what you started." Josh gripped the flashlight tighter and followed the voice. The hallway twisted and stretched, pulling him deeper into the house. But he kept going past the peeling wallpaper. The door was slightly ajar, just as it had been before. The room was empty, save for the chair in the center, and the faint outline of the figure seated in it. But this time, Josh didn't run. The figure lifted its head, hollow eyes gleaming in the darkness. Josh hesitated for a moment, then slowly lowered himself into the chair opposite the figure. The air grew thick, suffocating, and then the figure spoke again, its voice a soft, ghostly whisper. "You belong to me now." The lights flickered, and for a brief moment everything went dark. When the light returned, the room had changed. Josh was no longer in the house. He was back at Tony's Pizza, standing behind the counter as the phone rang. It was midnight. The phone rang again, and Josh picked it up, his voice steady, as though nothing had ever happened. "Tony's Pizza, how can I help you?" And from the other end of the line came the same distorted voice that had begun it all. "One large pizza, extra cheese." The call ended with a click, and Josh's heart sank as he realized the terrible truth. He would never escape. The end, the end. Thank you for watching our video. For more creepy stories, stay tuned to our channel. Like, subscribe, and share. See you next time. Till then, take care.